Good evening. It's 8:01 and you're listening to Runchatlive episode 50. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to try and remember this episode because I listen. I'm not gonna lie, I do listen back to every episode because I just can't wait to hear the content again. But I do notice sometimes I forget that a lot of people are listening to this as a podcast, and so things I bring up on screen obviously you can't see. So there might well be some images tonight. So if you are listening on the podcast, excuse me if I don't explain what's on the screen. You've always got the option of watching it on YouTube, obviously, if you do want to see the images. But I know our guest tonight, I have got a few images to help explain. So there you go. But I will do my best to help people who aren't watching it, to explain what's going on. So yes, episode 50, as you might have seen, actually it's a memorable occasion. Because it's our second year now. We've been doing this for 2 years. I say we, like I'm a big company. It's just me, and 2 years old, and it's the 50th episode tonight. So happy birthday to me, exactly. I can't believe where the 2 years has gone. Incredible. And that's an average of an episode every 2 weeks. So that's pretty good consistency in the podcasting world, I would say. I just want to check, as always, we're streaming to the running community on Facebook. So I would just want to check if someone from the running community can say hi, just to make sure that the stream is working in there. It always is. It's fantastic. And my thanks to the running community for letting Runchatlive stream to them as well as the Facebook page, because that's what Runchatlive is about. It's about closing the gap between therapists and runners. I know as a therapist that there is a little bit of a feeling with the running community that, oh no, I'm not going to go to a therapist. They're just going to tell me I need to come back for 6 sessions. And I know that happens. And I hate that. I want you to love therapists and to understand that's old school. We now want to give you the tools to look after yourself, to send you away if we can, to make you self-sufficient. It's a brave new world. And that's what Runchatlive is all about. So I like to try and help you see that through the guests I have. So that's the idea anyway. Let's have a look. Pedro's in the house. Hola, Pedro. ¿Cómo estás? We've got Terry Vaughan. Hey, Terry, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. If you do want to leave a comment or ask a question, then remember, in case you're not used to the show, then I can bring you up like that. Look at that, Pedro. You remind me of somebody in that photo. So yeah, if your comment can come up, you can get your little bit of fame there, and so on. And Terry as well. Thank you for my birthday greeting, 50. I won't tell you if I'm 50 or not, but yeah, 50 episodes. It's cool. It's amazing. Towards the end of the show, I'm going to give you a notice of a lottery we're running to actually get 2 50% discount codes for the Runchatlive conference on October 29th and 30th this year online. I thought, how can I celebrate 2 years and 50 episodes? Give away 2 50%. See, that's the way my brain works. So that's what we'll be doing towards the end. So do stick towards the end, or if you're listening to the recording, then just fast forward and get the deal now. Very simple to enter. But yeah, do have a look out for that. Thanks, Terry, for that. Who else we got in the house before I go on? Sarah Jones, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're well. What a happy photo. Look at that. Beautiful. Right. Before I go on, let's make sure that I give due credit to my sponsors. Let me just get rid of that solo. So as you know by now, not for all 50 episodes, probably about 44 of them, my sponsors have been the Brighton Beard Company. If you see me actually sometimes watching the YouTube videos, just to see the beard go down here and back up here and down here again is worth it. I might put them all together to show the different beard styles of Matt in 50 episodes, but Brighton Beard Company has stuck with me through thick and thin. And thank you guys. And it's still, I recommend them. Obviously, it's the products I use. If you're looking for, this will mean nothing if you haven't got a beard, but if you have and you like that waft of oil or balm, or the control it gives you, or just grooming yourself, we all do it. So do go to the Brighton Beard Company, www.thebrightonbeardcompany.co.uk. And if you do go there, make sure you use the code RCL. Let's get rid of that text on there. RCL15, because it'll give you 15% off any product at that website, and I do recommend them thoroughly. Also, thanks again to the running community. Anybody in the running community yet? Don't forget to say hello if you are there. Don't feel afraid. It's not all a room full of therapists. There will be some therapists here, but the idea is we learn how to get on together because we all want the same thing, believe it or not. So don't feel bashful. Just put up some comments. It's like school, isn't it? There's no question being a stupid question. You can guarantee that someone else in the room's got exactly the same question. You must have heard that before. So please, 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 the reason I do these is so runners in particular can ask our guests questions. And if the guests are dumbfounded, then that's fine. The guest has to sort it out because the guest is working to help runners. So that's kind of something which I'm very happy for you to do. Do ask questions. Can't forget, obviously, last week's guest, Dr. Benno Nig, fantastic set of downloads, as I would have expected. It's on YouTube, obviously, and all podcast apps. A total legend. If you're not familiar with him and you're a therapist, well, you need to be if you work with runners. And if you are, it's a great opportunity, especially to have a look at. I purposely asked a lot of colleagues like Tom Goom, Simon Bartol, Jeff Esculier, Courtney Conley, who else was in there? Nick Knight, Trevor Pryor, to give me some of the favorite papers, just to give a selection. Trevor Pryor was kind of in Benno's good books all night because he was really pleased that Trevor highlighted this last paper here about the effects of isolated ankle strengthening. Benno was just praising Trevor all night, so that was amusing. But yeah, so if you want to like a little, there's probably about 6 or 7 papers there chosen by other guests from the show, which are highlighted on that YouTube thing. So it's quite a nice way to have a look through Benno's career and yeah, familiarize yourself with some of the papers. Useful, eh? There we go. And it also talks about, like I say, his latest paper. We all know about the carbon fiber plate shoes, and what we're not so clear on is how they work or how much of the impact is from that as opposed to the foam or the stack height. So as we were talking about last week, Benno has released the latest paper, which kind of puts forward a hypothesis or a concept of, it's all to do with the physics, and he explains it in this paper, which is open access. You can have a look. So that's on the episode as well. Boom. Look. Anyway, like I said, towards the end, we'll talk about the conference and an offer, but I think I've left my guest for this week down in the lobby for long enough. It is another huge name in research. I'm so proud and humbled by getting these people, because it really is getting the information from the horse's mouth, as it were. So Dr. Guillaume Millet is going to be, if you look up fatigue, neuromuscular fatigue, to do, especially not just running, all over the shop, then you will probably see Millet somewhere on there. Huge contributor to research, actually worked at the Human Performance Laboratory with Benno Nig in Calgary for 4 or 5 years, which I'm going to ask him about a little bit, now back in France. And yeah, very excited to bring him to you. So I think, let me check my crib sheet. I haven't left anything out which I needed to. Bum, 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 bum. No, we're all good. All from memory, didn't have to look there once tonight. I'm getting good at this after 50 goes. So there you go. Yeah, so without further ado, sit tight. Feel free to ask questions as and when. We can both see it down the side there. So my guest, as always, is welcome to say, oh, there's a good question there from so-and-so. So let those questions come, people, if you're watching it live. But now I shall bring up Dr. Guillaume Millet. Bonsoir, good evening.
Bonsoir. Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
Fine. We're multilingual here. I do them in Spanish. I was thinking about doing it in French with you, but I don't know much more than bonsoir. So,
and happy birthday then.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
I was thinking we can have the same sponsor, apparently.
Well, I didn't want to draw attention to that. But looking back at your photos, which I've done, I have kind of like had a look all through your past. Generally, there seems to be a beard there most of the time, isn't there? Has it always been a bit of facial hair? Was that kind of your look when you were running across mountains? And
yeah, it's been a long time now.
Yeah. Have your, because you've got 2 children, did you say 18, 16, yeah? Have they seen you without a beard?
Sorry?
Have they ever seen you clean shaven?
I can't remember exactly. Maybe not, actually.
Yeah,
maybe I don't. I'm not too sure, but that's been a long time for sure.
My kids never have, and I love these videos of people who shave and then they say hello to the baby and the baby cries. I can't wait to do that. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Oh no, my pleasure. I'm really honored to have people of your caliber here. What part of France are you in again?
I am near Lyon, so this is in Saint-Étienne. So it's east, not southeast, more east, not too far from the Alps.
Okay, and is that where you were born originally then, or?
No, I was born very close to Switzerland, so French border, French side, but close to Geneva.
Ah, okay.
It's called the Jura Mountains. A very nice place for cross-country skiing, well known for cross-country skiing.
Ah, right. Is that what got you? Is that what got you into it then? Did you witness that as a child and think, I'd like a bit of that then? Was it really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. We'll talk about that in a sec. Let me just ask first of all, because obviously it followed on from Dr. Nig last week. How did you end up going from France to Canada? How did that happen?
It's a good question. I'm not for sure. I guess at some point I wanted to have an experience, international experience, and I wanted a very good lab, and which is obviously the case with HPL. But I didn't want to go anywhere, like in the UK, for instance. Just kidding. But I wanted a nice place for the family and a very good lab, and there are not that many places. Salt Lake City could have been a nice place, but Calgary was fantastic. So yeah, and they just had a position. I applied and I got the job. So it's as easy as that.
Fantastic.
But the plan has never been to stay there forever. I wanted to go for a couple of years. Then I was so happy there that we extended a little bit, and then I wanted to stay a bit more. But my wife was a bit homesick, so we got back to France. It was a fantastic experience. People are very nice, excellent scientists, and it's a top faculty. So yeah.
And you went over there already as an established researcher in the field of fatigue, didn't you? Because you went over there.
Yeah. I went there in 2013, so I was already 40 something.
Oh yeah. So I guess they were very pleased to see you there as well.
I hope so.
Yeah. Sure
No, it was very nice.
And then you came back, and now you've got big things happening for you as well, haven't you? In France, you're heading a team there.
Yeah. I was a bit anxious, to be honest, because the funding situation in Canada in general, and especially in our domain, is much better than in France. But then I got very lucky to receive a huge grant when I got back, and some time-protected research as well. So very good condition to set up a new lab. And I have many PhD students, postdocs, so no complaint.
And this is I'm glad there's an acronym for it. It's the Inter-University Laboratory of Human Movement Biology. Easier said, LIBM, yeah?
LIBM, yeah. It's not as big as the HPL, but it's still quite a big lab. It's so what you have on the screen, is only the facilities we have in Saint-Étienne, but the lab is also in two other universities, which are Chambéry and Lyon. So overall, it's 110 people, and it's medical doctors, PhD engineers, postdocs, staff, of course, PhD students. So yeah, quite a big lab, working in biomechanics, physiology, neuroscience, etc. So life sciences in general apply to exercise and health and performance, of course.
So the studies into fatigue, which we'll talk about more later on, that's only part of what's happening at the LIBM, is it? You're looking at much more than just fatigue.
Yeah, of course. No, it's not. Yeah. I wish everyone works on fatigue, but unfortunately, this is not the case. But there are quite a few. My group working on fatigue is quite large, but of course, there are like not 110 people are working on fatigue. They will in the future.
Before we go on, and I'm itching to talk about it because I need the runners who are in the room here. We've got, let's just bring this up, the running community. Welcome all. We're talking about training fatigue in ultra trail running. Please do ask any questions you wish. No questions is silly. Very good. Thanks for reminding me that, the running community. But yeah, for the runners out there who I can understand, and this is part of our challenge, they're like, research. My friend in the club, he's a great runner, so I'm going to do what he says. I'm going to buy his shoes. It's something which is part of the problem for runners, I think. They find the research maybe intimidating, maybe boring, but this is what this is all about. So it always helps, doesn't it, when the person who writes the research happens to be a little bit of a champion themselves. So yeah, tell me about this photo and tell me a bit about your history of endurance running, Guy, if you could.
Yeah, so, well, champion obviously is wrong. I've never been a champion. I've been a runner for sure, an ultra runner, well, actually an endurance athlete, I guess, for more than 30 or 35 years. Not a champion. The UTMB. So this picture is at the UTMB. So beginning of the night, as you can see, before Col du Bonhomme, I guess. This is at the bottom of Col du Bonhomme after the Contamine, if I remember well. Yeah, so as you can see, ultra running makes you smart, as you can see from my face. No, I guess I was super motivated. It was Actually, this year I think it was my 5th UTMB, and that's definitely not the best. We were actually doing a study at the same time. I was in charge of this study, and the stress associated with the study also was probably in the best shape of my life. I ended up I finished because I was a subject for the study, but not as good as I was expecting, because again that was probably my best years in terms of what I should have done. And in the end, this is not only about physical capacities, I guess.
It's tricky. Whenever you go to a web page, it seems that every single race out there, endurance race, is the most difficult foot race in the world. They all seem to call themselves that. But the UTMB is pretty special, isn't it? It has got a reputation as being one of the most challenging ones. Why is that? It's not just the distance. Obviously, it's over 100 miles. It's just over 100. Is it 106 or something? Or
800 miles.
Yeah,
160K.
What else about it makes it so, in terms of endurance, so challenging?
No, I don't think this is the most difficult race. It is probably the most known race in the world, probably now. And I think the reason it's so well known is that it's and from the beginning, actually. So first edition was 2003. It was, I guess, the right place, the right time, organized by the right person, and that's my interpretation. And from the beginning, it has been huge. I did the second one, not the very first one. And when I did it, I was like, okay, this is going to be something special. This is going to be different. And I was right. And it was visible from the second edition. And of course, because this is around the Mont Blanc, this is also part of the success, I guess. This is such a nice place in Chamonix and around the Mont Blanc.
There's quite a lot of elevation there as well, isn't it?
It's around 10,000 meters, which is pretty normal, I guess. This is an average elevation. Yeah, of course, this is you have to climb, but I mean, for the distance, I mean, the Barclay is much higher than elevation than that, and there are other races, and the technicity actually of the trail is not that bad. And if you look at the time of the winners, 20 hours, this is pretty fast. Of course, it's not as fast as the Western states, or because there is much less denivellation. But compared to other races, like in France, there is a famous one in La Réunion, island of La Réunion. So people are much slower. I mean, the winners are much slower because the technicity. So denivellation is the same, but the technicity is higher. So it's more difficult, the trails themselves.
So I'm sure I've read that like 45% or something of the people who enter don't finish. Is that because it's so popular, a lot of people enter who shouldn't be entering? Or
no, because you need to be qualified for that. So if you cannot show experience, so you need to get points, and to get points you need to run long races. So you cannot. When I was running, it was different, but now you cannot run the UTMB without being an experienced trail runner. It's impossible.
But even the people who start it, I think only 50% actually finish.
No. This is much. It depends on the weather conditions mainly.
Okay.
But it's much less than that. I believe it's around 30%.
Oh, is it? All right. Gosh. Okay. Right. Well, and I don't know whether particularly the runners in here heard, but you haven't just done it. You've placed in the top 6 3 times, is it?
Correct.
Yeah.
But it was at the very beginning, so I don't
stop being so modest. Oh my guess.
No. This is just the truth. I mean, yeah. I'm happy that I did it in 2000 something, because now it would just be impossible. The level is much higher than it was, but still, it was. I was happy with that for sure.
Alan, can you tell me, you're a runner and you love your running? Just tell me if you're impressed. Were you 3 times in the top 6 UTMB? I think it's pretty good, and you can bring me up. Fantastic. Right. So obviously details of this and your history available in your website. I just want to pick up quickly. The name's pretty cool as well. The name means more to me, but because I'm getting involved with the Spanish physiotherapist departments in Chile, etc., then I know that particularly in South America, physiotherapist is known as kinesiologo, or some people tell me it's a slightly different branch to physiotherapy. But anyway, your website is kinesiology, so I can see what you've done there. Very clever. But yeah, so if people are familiar with Guy or want to get familiar, then I mean, that is a fantastic website. I've had a good look through there. It's quite new, isn't it? What prompted you to set up what's kind of quite a personal website after all these years?
I've been thinking about it for many years, but I didn't find the time. and I was lucky enough to have an assistant, very nice assistant, very good, and she helped me a lot creating this website. Basically, she did the job, and and during the lockdown, I mean, that was a way to keep her busy, I guess. And I think that's important, not only to introduce myself and show myself to the world, but even for I think can be important to get grants. Because people, if they want to know more about you, having a website, I think, can be a plus. So that's the main reason why I did it.
And who is it directed towards? Who do you think will get something from it? Is it for therapists as well as runners, or people who already run or want to get into running, or who do you think? Who would you send towards that?
Well, scientists will get all my publications, so the academic part, my trainees, etc. But for runners or even patients interested in fatigue, like cancer patients, etc., I'll try also to get more like general things. For instance, there is the media section, and there are quite a few videos. So the website is in English only. There are quite a few videos. Some are in French, but some are in English. For instance, there is a very nice video from about it's a film that Dutch TV has done on our UTMB experiment last year. So if you want to know about fatigue and what we were doing at the UTMB, there is a 30 or 40 minutes video on the website in English.
So there we go. Now, I've had a good look around it a few times now, obviously, since knowing you were coming on the show. It's a lovely looking website. I did think you'd done it yourself. I'm slightly less impressed with you now because it does look really nice. But now you've said, yeah, it's a very good job. So you can commend the person who did it. It looks really, really good. Really up to date. So yeah, recommend that, people. If you're looking for information, then yeah, definitely have a look at that. So you've also written a few books. Let's bring these up as well. I'm just conscious that because you've only just joined Twitter, haven't you? I feel already that not enough people know about you.
Yeah, it went with the website. I was very reluctant for many years. I was hesitating, and then I decided to go. And actually, it was a good surprise. I thought it would be not as good as it is. I learned already a few things. I got already a few things on Twitter, and I didn't expect that. So I should have done that before.
I think I remember Dr. Niggs saying to me he felt a little bit disappointed because he'd heard it was really controversial. He thought people were going to argue. He thought, you know, and I was like, I think that was maybe 10 years ago or something. People are a little bit more, reserved now, unless you type in capitals.
It's funny because we went on Twitter the same week with Benno and without saying anything to each other. So it was kind of funny.
Was that a coincidence? Was it?
Sorry?
Was that a coincidence that you both appeared on Twitter at the same time? Or did you both think?
Yeah, it was
just coincidence.
Just by chance, yeah.
So a few books you've had in your past. Obviously, there's the one which is How to Succeed at UMTB, which is available in English and French, which is cool. And there still seem to be, looking around at various articles I've seen about the races. I think even on the race organization website itself, it still recommends these books for people who are looking for technical guides and things like that. And you've also written, let's have a look, this one here. Let's just bring this up so people can see it properly on the screen. Actually, if I put it up, I'll put it up big. When was this one written? I haven't looked into this one. Ultra-Trail. That's just in French, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's in French only, yeah.
That's okay. A lot of English people speak French. They just don't like the French to know about it. We've always got this relationship where, but yeah, that's in French. And then you've also got these two. I'm dying to ask you about this one, La Forme, or I don't even know what it means. What's this one about?
Yeah, so it's basically fitness, as you can see from the picture. Yeah.
Is that running inspired as well, or is that just in general?
No, it's just health and sports and physical activity. Like very, very basic book for public.
And then you've got the skiing one, which I want to talk to you
about. That was the very first one.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and so a long time ago, like 95, something like that. 98.
Brilliant. Okay, but people check them out, especially if you speak French or you want to learn French. Right, we've got through. I just want to make sure that people out there know who you are, and now people have got no excuses but to have a look. And you're putting out some great stuff on Twitter as well, some interviews and papers, and you're really becoming quite rapidly a great source, somebody to follow.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's good stuff. I would recommend people follow you. Right, so we are talking today, obviously, about fatigue, particularly in ultra trail runners. I think I heard you on another podcast when I've in the past, where it's like we could have a whole hour just talking about what is fatigue. I thought that was such a great comment. It is a very tricky subject. There's so many, it's so complex and so many other factors. So I've organised way too many questions for you tonight. But I thought we'd start off because it is about ultra trail running, and I have been pushing you in all the different ultra trail running clubs. What when does a trail become an ultra trail? Because as far as I can see, some people, the biggest mistake they make is thinking, I'm going to do an ultra, I just got to run a trail a bit farther, and that's what they think. But there's quite a difference, isn't there? It's quite a big step to move into ultra trail, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't think there is any, there is more than one definition, I think, for ultra trail. It's the same thing as ultramarathon. It's just one step further than 42.195 kilometers. I don't think so. Some people are saying, okay, if you start running ultra when you are running more than 6 hours, so that's a definition. Don't ask me why 6 hours, but this is a definition that has been popularized quite a few times on papers, maybe including us, I can't remember. But I think there is no definition of ultra endurance. It really depends on you and your fitness level. And even for me, I think the definition of an ultra for me now is not the same as 10 years ago when I was running ultra. For me, now running 20K is almost an ultra, and it was just a warm-up 10 years ago. So it really depends on the person, I guess.
So when do you think, is it a distance thing when the training really has to start changing? I mean, for example, I always say between I say that pretty much there's lots of people who can just do a half marathon. You don't particularly have to train for it. You don't have to change your life that much, depending on who you are. But for most people, if you're going to run the 26.2, you're going to have to change your life. You're going to have to get your sleep, get your food. So I make that distinction between a half and a full. When does it kind of start changing for people who are going to do an ultra, when they've got to actually make some changes to the training they've done previously?
Actually, I don't think there is so many differences between running trails and running ultra trails. And again, depends on the definition of ultra trails. But because we cannot say always there is no definition, blah blah blah. So let's say it's above 100 kilometers on trails. Okay, so this is, let's say this is ultra. We can take also the ultra definition. But anyway, so let's put the barrier here. And I think the training is basically the same, and except that for ultra, of course, you need to train a little bit more. And I think one of the main difference is that for ultra, you need to, in my opinion, and this is something I've proposed many years ago, you need to do what I call shock weekends. We can go back to that in details later if you like, but this is basically the idea of so most of it, like 90% of the time, if you're an ultra trail runners, you're going to do the same training as trail runners, including trying to do interval training, strength training, etc., etc. But then at some point you have to do those very specific training sessions that I call shock weekend, because this is the only way you can really be in specific conditions compared to, this is exactly the point.
I've got the diagram here. Again, people listening on the podcast, you're not going to have the benefit of the diagram, but you might want to check out YouTube because you brought it up now. So I'm just going to, tell us about some of the factors on this diagram, because it's a very important thing, isn't it? This is the difference between when you are going to go into ultras, the way you train for them. I'm going to put it on there. So, talk away.
Yeah, so when I said this is the only way you can retrain in specific conditions, this is about all the things that there are on the slide. So for instance, your equipment. Of course, if you want to know if the shoes or your backpack are appropriate, you cannot only test them on 2 or 3 hours. You have to test them for many hours to make sure that they work well. Same thing for nutritional strategy. If you run 2, 3 hours, 5 hours, basically you can eat anything, you'll be fine. But then when you start to run for 10, 15, 20, 30 hours, then nutrition becomes a real problem. So you need to make sure that you know exactly what you are doing, what type of food works for you, what type of food doesn't work for you. So this is very important. And of course, you can test that during competition, during real ultra trails, but you are not going to run a competition every day. So testing during shock weekend is very important. So you have, even if you do only 2 or 3 weekends like that before the race, I think it makes a huge difference. Same thing about technique. If your long runs are 2 hours, you basically run all the time, except if the uphill is super steep. But in ultras, you are not going to run very often. Actually, you are going to walk a lot. And if you don't do short weekends, when do you learn, or when do you train walking? Never. So you really need to do that for that reason. Another good example is you need to make sure that your muscle fibers are resistant enough to muscle damage. You know, when you run downhill, eccentric exercise, most people know that it induces muscle damage. Of course, you can do strength training, you can do eccentric training, you can do specific downhill training, so it works. But the best way to do it is to be in the real situation. So to run downhill at the right speed, so slow speed, but that's enough. And for 5,000 meters overall downhill running, 6,000, 7,000 during the weekend. So of course this is tough, and you need to recover. But again, this is the only way to be very specific to your competition.
There seems to be, I mean, I know quite a few elites in ultra who kind of do obviously weekend camps in Menorca or something, and they offer these camps. I suppose if you're going to do a short weekend, is that the time where you do go and get help from somebody who knows what they're talking about and train you properly, and try and go somewhere where it's got similar conditions to where you're going to be running?
Yeah, if you can do that, that's if you it's a good way to get experience from someone else. And it's also, of course, much more fun if you than doing that yourself. This is actually probably the best souvenir that I have from my career is those shock weekends. I mean, when we are going, especially if you can go, for instance, if you are registered to the Tour du Mont-Blanc up to UTMB, you go there and you do the Tour du Mont-Blanc in 2 days or 3 days. And that's a short weekend. And that's fantastic. You stay at the hotel or mountain hotel during the night, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, and that's a huge part, isn't it? Of, I think, although running is famously something you do by yourself and it's just you against you, I think the longer the distance get, the more social it becomes, the more the bond you form with your fellow athletes, and everyone seems to be so chilled out. And I've spoken with champions. Like I had the good fortune of being at the Ultra Mirage, not running it. I was just doing media, and I was driving around in a Jeep following the athletes. But I spoke to Rashid El Mourati and Elizabeth Barnes and Sonia and all of these, and Bushra, and they're all such chilled out, calm people. Is that I think I asked the same question to Alex Hutchinson when he was a guest. Is it a coincidence that these long distance runners are so calm and seem so collected and at peace?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence. If you run like crazy, I don't think you cannot go very far. You can go fast, but you cannot go far. And you need to go far when you're on ultra, obviously. And actually, yeah, I agree with you. It's almost like the contrary to what most people would say, that if you are an ultra runner, you're necessarily someone lonely, don't want to talk to anybody, etc., etc. And I think this is actually the opposite. People, they really enjoy running with other runners, including during the race. I know many people who have met actually during a race and stayed friends. And yeah, this is very nice, because you have time actually. If you do a 10K, of course, this is so intense that you cannot even talk. And even if you can talk, this is so short that there is no way you can know the other people. And in ultra, you can not only you have, of course, all the time, but then the intensity is so low that you can talk for many hours sometimes and you can stay sometimes with the same guy for many hours. You can, if he's running out of water, you can give him water, the other way around, etc., etc. So in the end, the opponent is not the enemy. It's actually it helps you to get a better performance. So it's quite different compared to shorter distances, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Yeah, it's very true. We've got questions coming in already. We will get onto the different factors of fatigue, but Alan's come up with a question. Alan Strock, who's part of the running community, and he asks, I want to run, this is probably quite a common question for people out there. I want to run ultras the furthest in the future. The furthest I've run is 15 miles. What's the best way for me to increase distance and stay strong? Where are we? Okay, stay strong enough to complete the distances required. So yeah, someone's making that break, basically. I'm sure you've been asked this for a few times, it's in your books, but when you want to get past kind of marathon distance into ultras, how should you change your training?
Well, first, before you do that, I guess it is important that you really want to do it, and I guess this is the case for you should not do it because this is how can I say that? Because if you don't do ultra, you're not a serious runner. You really need to want to do that. I think it's important, and not everyone will enjoy ultra. I think if you're a fast runner, you don't like walking, you're a runner. You're not a walker. And some people actually don't like ultra. They try it and then they go back because this is not for them. But maybe I guess this is not the case of Alan. So how do you increase the distance? You need to make sure that the day you want to go further, you want to do ultra, you are in the good conditions to do that. By good conditions, I mean you can train enough. Even so, as I said, I don't think there is a huge difference between a trail runner and an ultra-trail runner in terms of amounts of volume of training that you have to do to finish a race like the UTMB, for instance. I don't think you need to train 30 hours a week to complete the UTMB. And actually, I believe the opposite. You can redo the UTMB with, let's say, 8-10 hours a week of running plus the short weekend. That's my opinion. For most people, it will work. If you can train more, fine, but this is not absolutely necessary. So yeah, so by good condition, it means that you can train a bit more than maybe what you are doing right now, and also recover well. Because most people, I mean, not most people, but if you have a very intense job and 4 children and so a super busy life, then you can still do it, but it's more difficult. You have to be very well organized. It's possible. I mean, when I was running ultras, my job was quite time consuming. I had kids, not 4, but still 2 kids. But so it's possible, but you need to be very well organized, and you can forget about TV, internet, etc., restaurants, etc. Basically, your social life. So you need to make sure that your life is okay, so that you are in the good condition to run ultra. Otherwise, you may get fatigue or overtrain, and it won't work. So if you're in those good conditions, then I think anybody can run the UTMB, and I truly mean it. I mean, anybody.
I believe you. Yeah, I'm sold. It's interesting. There's some more questions coming in, which I'm going to try and tie in with the subject of fatigue, because, for example, I've got a question from Terry. Terry's saying, he's asking about the risks to heart health, when you start running these distances, which I think ties in quite nicely with, like, how do they compare the actual, because we know it's associated with, oh, it's going to be so tiring, you're going to feel devastated, it's really difficult. But there's that old expression of an ultra is kind of 90% mental and the rest is in your head. Are the physical demands and the dangers to the body in terms of physically that much more for an ultra, or does it become, as the research maybe suggests, that it is getting that mind prepared?
Okay, so I think there are 2 different questions here.
Probably, or 3.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take Terry's question first. Is it dangerous for your heart or in general? Is it good for your body? Is it healthy to run ultra? I understand the concern, obviously, and of course, this is the first time I hear that. I've heard that many times, actually, maybe too many, because what people tend to forget is that, okay, it's people are like, okay, so running a marathon is already difficult, so now you're talking about running 4 marathons in a row, plus the elevation, it's like climbing the Mount Everest and going down, so this is crazy, it cannot be healthy. Just forget that the intensity is not the same at all. So it's not only a matter of distance, it's also a matter of intensity. And then if you say, okay, you can say this is 4 marathons in a row, you can also say this is basically hiking. Okay, a bit faster than a normal hiking, but you don't have to carry a heavy load. So you're super light with good light shoes, etc., the poles, and you're still walking. So in the end, yeah, it takes time. But if you do the Tour du Mont-Blanc in 5 days or 7 days, you're going to, okay, you're just a bit faster. And you don't sleep, which may be a problem, but I don't think it's going to ruin your health. So there is no real evidence that actually ultra is bad for health. I guess this is not ultra per se. This is the way some people run ultras. Of course, if you run too many ultras, you don't take the time to recover. You never do a break during the year, etc., etc., and you're not in good condition, as I was mentioning before. Like you cannot recover properly. The stress is too high in your life. In the end, yeah, you can be overtrain, and this is maybe in the end this is not good for you. But if you are reasonable, I believe, and there are many examples of ultra runners who have been running ultras for many years and are still healthy, and I'm pretty sure they are going to be healthy when they get old. So there is no proof, and for the herd, this is the same thing. I don't think you can say again this is super long, but the heart rate is quite low. So, and actually the few experiments that we and others have run show that actually there is less heart fatigue than in marathon or Ironman triathlon, which are shorter than the UTMB, for instance. Okay, so that was one question. Or if you want, I can talk about your question, Matt.
Yeah, that probably, I hope that answers you, Terry. Yeah, it's a very important point. Yes, it's further distance, but it's not just about how far you're going, it's about the intensity you're applying through. Yeah. What other questions did I manage to get in there?
So the question about everything is in the head.
Oh yes, yeah, about preparing for it. Is it just more physical demand, or is it about training? Yeah.
So obviously this is both, and this is both in relationship. I mean, as you know, you cannot run, you cannot make a single step if you don't have a brain, because you need a nervous system to contract your muscle, and everyone knows that. But this is also true in the other around. You have sensors everywhere in the muscle, in the joints, etc., that tell the brain how you are feeling. And so, yeah, this is really both. And of course, the mental aspect is important. For instance, if you, in terms of giving up or not giving up, in the end, yeah, you have to be strong for that, because there are many times you just want to stop running and do something else. But in terms of performance, no, this is definitively the last word is to the brain, but the brain doesn't decide alone. He decides based on what he feels, and the body tells him what he has to feel. And so there are nociceptors, of course, that tells you how you are feeling, and if you are not well trained. So this is why this is not only in the head, obviously. If you're not well trained and you start to get muscle damage, inflammation, etc., then of course you're in trouble much faster than if you are well prepared for the race.
It's always tricky. It's like when you get a patient who's suffering from pain, you want to kind of explain pain a little bit, but not end up with that, giving them that impression it's all in your head. So it's similar with this, isn't it? We're kind of saying that to do an ultra, yeah, it's all to do with mental preparation, and not all of it, but a lot of it is. But you don't want the runner to think, oh great, so I can do it tomorrow. I just got to think you can do it. So how, I suppose maybe I know the answer, but if you're training for a long distance, how do you get that psychological preparation?
Most people don't do any preparation. It's like mental preparation for that. It's only for the pros, and even for them, most of them, they just don't have any mental preparation. They have a strength. Some of them have a strength and conditioning coach, or just a coach, but and maybe the coach helps a little bit, but most of the time they didn't work on that. They don't work on that at all. So, and I think this is underestimated, because there is a lot to gain out of it. I'm convinced about that. I've tried at the end of my when I was running at the end of my career again. I tried to do that, but it was only a try. I didn't push enough, and now I'm convinced that it was a mistake. And most people are reluctant to not, for instance, to not do a running session and work and do a mental training session. And I think it's a mistake. Sometimes it would be a better idea to do a mental training session.
And what do you mean by mental training session?
Well, working on your ability to, for instance, to ignore pain. So there are techniques for that, like mental imagery, positive talking, Afghan walking, that kind of techniques. I'm not an expert, I'm a physiologist, but I recognize that this is super important, and yeah, people have a lot to gain from that kind of techniques. And my prediction is that this will come in the near future. It is already coming. But in ultra, well, most people, they don't have a coach at all, so that's part of the problem. Talking about fatigue in the head, I think one thing is important to mention, even so it's more on the science side, is that if you run an ultra like the UTMB, you have what we call a huge central fatigue. So central fatigue obviously is related to what is happening in your brain, actually not in the brain, in the central nervous system in general. And the definition, or our definition of central fatigue, because central fatigue can be different things, but our definition of central fatigue is your inability to actually fully drive your muscles. So you try to contract maximally your muscle, and if you're at rest, let's say before the race, you contract maximally, and then what we use is either magnetic stimulation to the brain to help the muscle to contract, or electrical stimulation to the nerve. So we superimpose the stimulation to the maximal contraction, and at rest we don't see anything, basically. So you are able to fully recruit your muscle fibers, or your motor units, as we call them. But after the race, it's a different story. So of course you get fatigue, and our definition of fatigue is that you have a strength loss, and you tend to say, okay, this is normal because you have muscle damage, so it's normal that you get weaker, right? But the problem, not the problem, the reality is that this is true. The muscle is affected, obviously, but actually the greatest part of the fatigue is the central one, is due to your inability to contract your muscle, it can be seen as a way to protect yourself. So when we do again our electrical stimulation, so after the race, when we ask the people to contract maximally and we superimpose the stimulation, we are able to gain force and not a few, like a lot. So sometimes there is like a 20-30% reduction in your ability to fully drive the muscle. So this is quite interesting. But this is different to what is happening during the race. This is really because you need to contract maximally, but still, this shows that something is happening within the brain.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose it explains, I mean, we've got so many examples of where I've got to check this with you, because it's not quite the same as perceived exertion, isn't that slightly different? But we've got examples of where you think you can't go on, and then you see the finish line and suddenly you're sprinting over, or how athletes only collapse at the end of the race. They don't normally collapse during. So it's kind of, there's obviously factors going on there which aren't just to do with physical thresholds, as it were.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I actually decided in 2011 to publish a new model, which is based on the central governor from Noakes, but I think it's more appropriate, particularly to ultra distance. And yeah, this is based on that. So basically, the idea is that I don't know if you have the picture. Is that
it's the flush model? Yeah.
Yeah, the flush model. Yeah, exactly. So the amount of water in the tank is what you just said, the RP, rating of perceived exertion, and what you want to do is to minimize the amount of water that you have in the tank. And you have, in the model, you also have this security reserve. And of course, most of the time, and to not say, of course, it never happens, that you die from running. So it means that this security reserve, and it's like a flush. It works well, meaning that it doesn't overflow. I think this is the correct word. Anyway, so you don't die from running, meaning that the security reserve works well. But if you want to improve performance, what you need to do is to minimize the amount of water. And for that, there are many things that we can do. First, of course, the obvious one is to train. Because if you train well, it means that you are going to, for a given speed, you are going to receive, for instance, less feedback from your legs. If your muscle fibers are more resistant, then you will get less inflammation, and these nociceptive fibers I was talking about, they will fire less, and you will feel better. And if you same thing, so this is what we call the feedback mechanisms from the periphery to the central nervous system, and there is also what we call the feed-forward mechanism, and this is still related to your muscle fatigue, because if you fatigue your muscle and you want to run at the same speed, you need to recruit additional muscle fibers, because the first ones are fatigue. So you need to recruit additional muscle fibers to run at the same speed. And it means there is more action potential going out of your brain. And there is what we call a correlated discharge to the sensory cortex. And this is one of the reasons why you feel when you're fatigued, running at the same speed, you feel it's harder, right? Mm-hmm. So training is obviously important, but nutrition, we have the same nutrition. Of course, if you have a proper nutrition, your RP will be lower, so the level of water in the tank will be lower. But the flush model is nice because, for instance, it shows you that you have to start with an empty tank. Mm-hmm. And you must say, yeah, this is obvious at the beginning of a race, the tank is empty, but not necessarily. Because, for instance, there are studies showing that if you haven't slept well, or if you have some issues in your life, or some cognitive load, basically the week before, the day before the race, actually you have already some water in the tank. There is a very nice study from Mark Cora, for instance, showing that if you do, I don't know if you've heard about this study, if you do like an intense mental calculation task before doing a cycling exercise, when you jump on the bike after the mental calculation, your RP is actually already higher than if you have just watched a movie, right? And then, of course, if you start with a higher RPE, and then when you start to run, or if you start to cycle, then they both increase at the same time, and at some point you stop. And if you start lower, you cycle or you run longer, you do a better performance. So I have many examples, but this is it shows that in the end, what matters is the brain and basically the RPE.
Yeah,
because you decide to stop when you feel like I have enough, and if I go too far, then I'm in danger. And usually we don't do that, even if we're super motivated, because of course the more motivated you are, the smaller the security reserve is. But and if you take drugs, and this is the issue with drugs, and it can be both excitant, central nervous system excitant, or painkillers. In both cases, you put yourself in danger because you minimize the security reserve to a point that at some point you're in danger. And of course, it's never recommended, but it's probably less recommended in ultra running.
Very good. Oh, there's so much in there, which
that's great.
That was the gold answer. This is why I have to watch these shows back. But yeah, it's a lovely model. It's interesting. I can understand some people are used to the idea of you've got to have a full tank, as in the idea of fuel and petrol. So we're kind of turning that around, where in terms of resources, you've got to keep that water level down as low as possible, so as you're not pushing up to your maximum. But it's interesting.
And the mental preparation, I think I talked about that at the beginning, because we were talking about that preparation. Of course, it helps also to minimize. If you do a good job, like positive talking, that kind of thing, it helps. So it's not only about physiology, it helps to minimize the level of water. And that's why I needed to, at some point, I was like, okay, I'm doing neuromuscular fatigue study research. Okay, I hope this is important. But as a runner, I'm not satisfied with that, because it cannot explain everything. So I need a more comprehensive, integrative model. That's why I was, of course, I thought it was funny that it was a flush.
Of course, it's a human chance to always. No, it's great. And I like the fact, I suppose experience is a big thing, because you've got blisters and things like that. If any shock to the body or the nervous system that's not used to is going to raise alarm. So if you've trained and run through blisters and you're not your body's not going to get shocked by it, or if you have to walk and your body's used to walking, then again. So it's like everything, isn't it? The training is paramount, putting yourself into that situation to give you experiences there. Great, very nice analogy for runners to take away, probably for any distance race. It doesn't have to be an ultra. It's it would work, I suppose, in any distance. Fantastic. Let's have a little look down here because the questions are coming in fast and furious. Sarah, I think, well, you're getting your tips, aren't you, Sarah? You've got your first 2-day ultra, 30 miles each day in April. Fantastic. Congratulations to you. Sarah, leave some comments whether you've thought about the mental preparation or how on race day you're not going to surprise your body with anything. Have you thought about things like your nutrition strategy, or what happens if you do get a blister or something? Or I'd be interested to see if you've prepared for any of these things already, or whether anything is new for you and you haven't prepared for it.
So I guess the tip is short weekends.
Yes, the short weekends as well. Have you done any of them, Sarah? That'd be interesting to know. Where is this ultra? You don't say, do you? Is it in your, I suppose it's probably in the UK, isn't it? Not many people are traveling around the world at the moment, obviously. But where are you doing it? Have you been there? Are you used to the terrain? Have you run on the terrain? She says an ultra, yeah. So interesting. Come back, Sarah. Let us know more about that.
And this is one of the good points about the short weekend, is that you can also train. You can, it's okay to travel a bit because you travel for something, like it's not to run an hour. So you go there for 2 days or 3 days. So it's good that you can train on the terrain that looks like the terrain you will get, you will have during your ultra. So for instance, if you're doing like a very technical ultra, then it's better to train on technical trail. If it's less technical, then it doesn't matter.
Fantastic. Yeah, great advice. Right, Guy, I've got a question here from the head of the running community. So this is an important answer here. You've got to satisfy. I can have no it depends, or I can't answer that. Okay, just make something up if you're not sure. Okay, so Mark Burrows, creator and founder of the running community, says, Dr. Guillaume, we can tell it's going to be important now. On my long runs that go past 16 miles and onwards, I do seem to have a lot of salt on my skin afterwards, where I've been sweating more so the face. I have tried numerous electrolyte tablets. Is there anything else you recommend for this that I could practice with in my training?
I recommend that you don't take any salt. You don't need that. Just normal food. That's enough. Even if you are running ultras in the heat, I think it's a mistake to take a huge amount of salt. If maybe the thing you can do is to get and this is actually a good thing for ultra running, is to get salty food, but not salt per se. That's more than enough for sure. So don't worry about that. It's not an issue at all.
I suppose it depends. Again, it's going to be individual. Some people are going to sweat more than others, and leave.
Which is a good thing. If you sweat a lot.
Yeah, the opposite's worse for you. Is it, Mark? Is it a problem for you in terms of you just wondering why have I got this film of salt on me, or is it? Do you have kind of symptoms which are kind of slowing you down or causing some kind of discomfort? So if it's not bothering you, then don't worry about it. But yeah.
No, there is nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, good question there, Mark. Hope that answers you. If you need to come back with something else and stick something in the comments. Let's just check down here on the side. Terry, Tara. Hello, Tara. Let's put your wave up there on the screen. Thanks for joining us. I've got a question here from Guillermo Mata. Here we go. Some studies suggested that an even pacing is the best strategy to succeed. I guess it's really good. But in my view, this is not how it works in the real world. How important do you think pacing is during ultra endurance events? And let's see if we can link that with fatigue as well. I know, yeah, you tell me, is pacing something that helps keep the nervous system relaxed, that consistency, or does it always work that way?
I guess no. And he knows what he's talking. I know the guy, and he knows what he's talking about. He's a scientist. Actually, we published together. I have to be honest. But I promise I didn't know that he will ask a question on that.
Okay.
Hi, William. By the way, no, pacing is important, and it's true that an even pacing seems to be, as he said, from science at least, seems to be the best strategy. And usually the best runners have a more even pacing strategy, and the females actually also, science shows that the females also have a better even pacing strategy, which I think one of the good things about being a female, is that it helps to run a long distance, I guess. The problem is that if you start too fast, is that and I've seen people, when I say too fast, it's really too fast. Like people above the second ventilatory threshold in the first 10K of the UTMB, I've seen that they couldn't even talk. So this is, I don't know if it's very common, but this is quite common. And if you do that, of course, you are going to start at this high intensity to use lots of glycogen at the very beginning. If you do the same thing in downhill, because you cannot pace yourself, then of course we know that running intensity downhill is very important for muscle damage, etc., etc. So if you do that, you're dead. So that's probably one of the reasons why it's important to not start too fast. From a psychological point of view, I guess there are pros and cons. If you start too fast and then people start to catch you, I guess this is not good. But at the same time, I've seen people, I guess this is only for the elites, that I remember one UTMB, the guy was leading the race, and he was not supposed to be one of the best. I guess he was good, but not one of the best. But he started super fast, and then he was from Chamonix. And he was so excited, so motivated, that in the end, of course, he didn't win the race, but he placed, I think he placed third. And I think he wouldn't have done that with a more even pacing. So the psychological aspect, there could be pros and cons, I guess.
I remember reading, I think it was in one of Matt Fitzgerald's books, where he mentioned he went over, in one of the times he went over to train with Kenyans and that. And in Kenya, this idea of starting off just relaxed and at a special pace kind of goes out the window. They kind of just start off and go for it like they're all champions, and because they're all doing it together, they kind of maintain something that they wouldn't be able to maintain otherwise. And whether this is one of the things which helps Kenyan runners kind of exceed and do well, I don't know. But they're definitely, the whole idea we're very strict over here often about pacing and calculating and not going over that in a particular race. And he suggests that maybe that can hold sometimes runners back, and that you should go more by feel. But like you say, you can't trust yourself, can you, at the beginning of a race? You think you're running properly, but actually you're running much faster and you don't know about it. So yeah, it's tricky. I mean, how much during an ultra do some runners actually have to have a look at their watch and check they're not running too fast? Or is it something that some runners have to be really conscious of? Or
I'm not too sure. I used to do that for sure. I actually used to set up my my alarm on my heart rate monitor to make sure that I wasn't running too fast. And you only have to do that during the first 20-30 Ks, because after that fatigue already appears and you tend to reduce the pace anyway. But those first 30K, I think they're important. And if you're too excited, especially if you do a race like the UTMB or another big race and there is public and you feel like you're super excited, you've been training for that for many months, and now you are okay, now I'm ready, I'm gonna show you guys what I can do. And then this is where this is risky. I mean, people tend to encourage you, and if there is the family, etc., there is definitely a risk that you start too fast.
Yeah, definitely. Mark Burrows has come back he was just basically worried that this is the salt guy. He was worried that the amount of salt on him meant he was not fueling something correctly, and he felt fine. It wasn't like linked with excessive fatigue or anything. He was just a bit surprised looking at it.
Some people are thinking that this may induce cramps, and we know that this is not the case. This is not related to that. So don't worry about that.
Good question, Mark. I'm sure you're not alone. I'm sure other people would have the same reaction if they saw this on them regularly. Guillaume has replied. It says, perfect. Thank you very much for the interesting answer. Wow, how much are you paying him? He's really That's a great question. Thanks, Guillaume. That's wonderful. Sarah Jones is coming back about what she's running. Where was it? She is running in Scotland. She says, to be honest, it's completely new. This will be the longest run I've ever done. The Ultra-Trail ran in Scotland. She's used to doing OCRs, obstacle course races, and winging it. So I'm approaching this a bit more methodically. She's stubborn. Probably why don't say that. It's very sexist. No. She's stubborn, which will go a long way, but I'll definitely look at the shock weekends. I think the nutrition will be a challenge to see what works for me. Yeah, testing out the nutrition.
So you can test your nutrition during those shock weekends. So yeah, you have to try that before you do race for sure. And even if you do, as I said, if you do 2 or 3, that's enough to make a difference, in my opinion.
We're tough. Time is ticking on. Are you still okay to talk for another 10 minutes or so?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
You sure? I definitely want to fit in that subject of women, because that fits in nicely with Sarah. There does seem to be a certain success amongst middle-aged women and endurance running. I don't know whether it's become a bit of a confirmation bias, but does seem to be more races now where women are beating the men, or coming second or third. I've had the pleasure of traveling around with Elizabeth Barnes, and in the Ultra Mirage, she came third out of the whole pack. With and Rashida Norabati was first, obviously, and her husband was second. But she was third and left all the other people. So is there something in the research which shows, like you've already kind of mentioned, maybe a predetermined benefit for being female with endurance running?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting topic and very hot topic actually at the moment, because of actually the names that you mentioned, and there are many other many other names, I think we can say, like one famous one in UK, I guess, was Jasmine Paris as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in the US or in Europe, for instance, I remember the first CCC, which is the half UTMB. There were I think 1,000 people at the start, and a woman named Corinne Favre won the race. So yeah, it's not. There are more than one example for sure. That being said, this is still anecdotal evidence, and so this is obviously not enough. This is important, and because there are not that many actually races, or not many sports, or even, and I don't think there is actually any other, except if we talk about sailing or maybe horse riding or that. But of course, this is different. When you talk about a sport where physical capacities are important, it never happens, almost never happens. And in ultra, this is still rare, we have to be honest, but it happens much more than in other disciplines. Okay, so the question is, are they stronger or faster than men? Definitively not. And in my opinion, they will never be, because they have two major problems with running. Females, which is body fat, and we know that even 10% body fat above men, this is not a lot of weight, but this is definitely an issue, and a big issue. And so the skinniest female will never be as skinny as the skinniest man for sure. And the second problem is VO2 max. And we know VO2 max, including for ultra endurance, maybe a little bit less, but still, even for ultra endurance running, VO2 max is very important, and because they have less red blood cells, their VO2 max is lower than men. And those two factors explain why they will never beat, in average, they will never beat men, they will never outrun men. Okay, so for sure, in average, they will never run faster. Now the question is, what happens when the distance increases? Are they still at the same, the difference between men and women, is it still the same? Is it reducing? Is it increasing? For sure, it's not increasing. I mean, they are as capable as men to run ultra distance, if not more. That this is the first very important point. Now, so the question is, does the difference stay the same, or is it actually reduced? And for that question, there are, depending how you look at the problem, you can have one version or the other. For instance, if you look at just the performance, like the record or the average time or average performance, depending how you look at that, like if you take the first 10 men, the first 10 women, or if you take everyone, then the outcome is different. There are studies that have tried to match, for instance, so let's say we take men and women with the same time on the marathon, and we ask them to do half marathon and an ultra, and we see if the difference stays the same, or if it changes. And for those studies, two are showing that when you increase the distance, the difference tends to be lower, and another study shows the opposite. So even for that, it's balanced. That being said, there are certainly some, if we think in terms of physiology, as I said, there are different factors that tend to show, or we tend to believe that it can be helpful for women in ultras. The first one is they have a higher percentage of type 1 fibers, which are fatigue resistant muscle fibers. They tend to save glycogen. This is, I think, the point I mentioned earlier. So at a given intensity, they save glycogen because they use more fat. So this is also something very good. They may be, we are not too sure about that, but a bit more resistant to muscle fatigue and muscle damage. And again, there is some controversy in the literature whether we look at animal models or human models. So anyway, so there are always pros and cons, but for sure, one thing we can say is that they are not less capable as men to run ultra. So for sure, it doesn't explain why there are so few females running ultras, because actually this is a big issue. And I know this is not the question, but still this is my answer. because at the UTMB, for instance, do you know what is the percentage of females at the start? If you don't know, try to guess.
I'd like to think it's growing, but I still imagine it's 10, 15, probably, yeah, definitely less than 15% something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Is it growing though?
No. Well, yeah. I guess depending on the race, but for the UTMB, no. It was like that in 2005, and 15 years after, we are still at 10%. So this is ridiculously low, for sure. And so the reason is definitively not physiology. So there must be something else, and this is not my job to tell what, but this is, I guess the answer is this is sociological reasons or maybe psychological reasons, but definitively not physiology. So, but it's a very interesting, very interesting topic. We showed and yeah, maybe another point on that, I think it's quite interesting, is that we showed in 2012 that at the end of the UTMB, when you match males and females in terms of level of performance, meaning like they are the same percentage of the first man and the first woman, respectively, women are less fatigued. I mean, particularly the muscle fatigue is lower in women. So it was quite intriguing. So we repeated in 2019, so last year at the UTMB, the study, and this time we didn't only test ultra, but we tested also shorter distances. And our hypothesis was that the longer the distance and the lower the fatigue in the females compared to the males. And actually, we didn't find that. We found that for 40 to 170K, the females tended to be less fatigued at the end of the race. But being less fatigued is still different. Sorry, this is complex, but this is not my fault. This is just the reality. But and again, this is not playing with the words. I think it's important to say that being less fatigued, it's not the same thing as being more fatigue resistant, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
No, and the reason I'm saying that is that this year we also did a kind of a survey or a questionnaire when we asked basically, okay, are you doing that for competition? Or are you doing that for fun? And we asked the same question to males and females. And there was a significant difference in the sense that you can imagine. So the female, they tended to be less competitive. So we can imagine that one of the reasons they are less fatigued is that they push less. So it's not necessarily that they were more fatigue resistant. Even so, there are physiological reasons why they could be more fatigue resistant, like the higher percentage in type 1 fibers. But the mood, the way they were running the race was also different. So this is, and you cannot ignore that. This is very important.
Well, this is what I'm kind of interested in. Like you've mentioned physiological, like peripheral fatigue and that, but what about the whole central fatigue? Is there potentially a difference in how?
There were no differences in terms of central fatigue.
No?
It was mainly at the muscle level.
Right. So we can't say that because women are better at being stubborn and more mental drive and putting up, and they've got more.
Again, be careful. Central fatigue, the way I describe it, measuring with this electrical stimulation.
Yeah.
So central fatigue measuring in our lab is different than what is happening in terms of during the race. So it's different than the central command during the race.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean,
they are pain resistant for sure. it's not a matter of being less pain resistant, I think, and I don't think we have any solid evidence that they are more or less pain resistant compared to males. Yeah. But some of them I've seen females at least pushing extremely hard and being in like super fatigue at the end of the race. But it's no, what I'm talking about is different, is that the way you do the race. It's not that you cannot do more. It's just like, no, maybe I don't need that, basically. Right, okay. I don't need to show to the world that I can push hard. I just want to finish the race and I'm happy with that. And even if someone overpass me, that's okay. I don't mind. If you're a man, that's a different story, maybe. I guess we are just more stupid than they are.
Oh, well, that there's no doubt. I'm living proof of that. Very interesting. It's gone so quickly. I think it's gone quicker than any other episode that I've ever had the pleasure of hosting. Let me just check in my crib sheet. We've actually been through quite a lot of the questions which I wanted to talk about, so it hasn't been, we haven't strayed as much as I thought. I'm just gonna have a quick check in the comments here. There was one. Got time for one more, as it's Mark as well. Okay, keeping it brief because I'm conscious you've got to get away. Heart rate training, does it depend on the individual? Is it something you particularly are interested in and making sure the person is training at the right intensity, or do you prefer going by perceived exertion, or does it depend?
You can use heart rate if you like. I guess this is a question of personal feeling. If you like that, if you like to watch your heart rate monitor all the time, this is fine. I have nothing about that. I guess one of the reasons I was running ultras and ultra trails in particular is that I didn't want to look at that, and I just wanted to enjoy the mountains. So I actually almost never wear any heart rate monitors. It was just me and myself. So no, feeling was, for me at least, it was the best option. But I have nothing against that, and it works if you have a coach and if you can do tests in the lab to know your threshold, blah blah blah. This is totally fine, and it works. The only time I used that was, as I explained at the beginning of the big races, to make sure that I didn't stop too fast. Other than that, I usually didn't use that. But again, just personal preference.
I think it depends so much on the individual, because some people try and stick to the theoretical zones which you're supposed to be in according to you, and it just doesn't work. You don't fit into the norm. I think I find that a problem sometimes with recommending athletes heart training. You have to see whether it works for you.
There are limitations for sure with heart rate, as for other types of training or way to assess or control your training, but it works.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, good question, Mark. Right, Guy, I've got to let you go. I'm sure you've got other things to be cracking on with. You're an hour after us, so what is it? 20 past 10 in France.
That's okay.
20 past 9 here, yeah.
Good. It's very exciting to talk about ultra, so I can talk the whole night if you like.
No, I admire the way as well. I really like the way someone of your obvious intelligence and experience in working in this is able to put in a language that runners can understand, and so that not everyone can do that. So that's I really appreciate that. It'll be really useful for people who are listening to this, hopefully, on the podcast as well. It's not just Runchatlive is not just for therapists. It's definitely for runners as well. Let's finish up then, basically, on what have you got in store then, Guy, for the rest of the year, or is it a little bit unpredictable because of COVID, or?
We had, of course, to change gears as most scientists, I guess. For instance, so I'm only talking about the stuff related to running because, of course, we have our work, and actually most of our work is on clinical fatigue, like cancer, multiple sclerosis, etc., and actually COVID patients, because we know that fatigue is a big issue in COVID. Anyway, so on running, we started actually a study with one of my PhD students where we wanted to track trail runners and have some of them coming regularly, like 4 times in the lab to be tested. And the rest of them were just assessed with questionnaires, etc., training load, and we wanted to examine what is happening during the season. And because of the COVID, of course, this is not a normal trail running season, so we had to to cancel that, but we still use the data to see the effect of lockdown on fitness, fatigue, sleep, etc., etc. So this is something that we are going to publish. So the papers that are coming, we have all the papers from the UTMB, so you can expect at least I would say 7 or 8 papers in the near future. Some of them have been submitted. Some of them have been rejected already, but it will get published at some point. So on running economy, the effect of running economy, the sex differences, obviously, as I said, the effect of distance on blood parameters, on strength, etc. So we have many papers on stiffness, tendon and muscle stiffness, biomechanics, etc. So we have many papers coming out of this UTMB 2019 study. And we also have a work in progress with the French Athletic Federation, where we try to compare. We didn't assess the classic aerobic capacities. We were more focused on the neuromuscular function, actually. So energy cost, running, biomechanics, force velocity profile, and we compared elites, so the best French runners, with recreational runners. We compare men and women, and we compare trail runners versus marathon runners. And there are, I cannot, of course, tell too much about that, but I can tell you that there are some interesting stuff that hopefully we will publish in the future. Hopefully it's quite interesting for the runners, not only for the scientists. You'll tell me.
Amazing. And if people want to keep up to date with these sort of things, then the website is the place to be. Is it? All this information gets updated.
Yeah, and Twitter as well.
And Twitter as well. Yeah, Twitter, you're putting out some great stuff on Twitter. So there you have it, people. Yeah, kinesiology.com, or also on Twitter, which is just at kinesiology. Yeah, definitely follow it. And I would recommend it for runners, as definitely therapists, but also runners as well, if you like to get your geek on and be up to date, because you do need to be to a certain extent. Unless you've got a therapist you can guarantee is giving you the research, and that's not always the case, as we often talk about here on Runchatlive. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Guy.
Thank you.
A real pleasure and a real honor to have someone of your history and continued presence in research on the show. So thank you so much for that. What I'm going to do is just put you back down into the lobby. If you do need to go, then you can go. Don't worry, no regrets. We'll talk later on. But if you want to hang around, then I'll come down in a couple of minutes and say thank you to you and talk to you a bit more. But if you need to go, then go. That's fine.
Thank you again, Matt.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for attending.
What a great guy. I love it. In 50 episodes, I still haven't had any, well, I suppose I choose the guests, but I still haven't had one guest who hasn't just been totally so modest. And so it's amazing. I love it. What great information. I wasn't sure whether tonight was going to be super technical or whether it was going to be, and honestly, I try and bend it in the direction of who the audience are. And tonight was more of a running related questions and people who are interested, so we went more that way. And that's what we do in Runchatlive. If it's an audience full of therapists, then we get a bit more technical and we talk more about the kind of clinical application of the knowledge and stuff like that. So it was lovely to see a lot of runners in tonight. If you do want to steer the conversation yourself, then the only way you can do it is actually come along to the live show and the recording. And then, so if you want it more clinical and more therapy related, then you have to come along and direct it that way. But whoever comes, we shall serve. That's the idea. And talking about information, then I'll just have a quick mention of, I did say at the beginning, Runchatlive conference, as you know now, is all online. Just as well, because the UK is the government's finally decided we're going to do what the rest of the world's doing and limit meetings. I don't know, if you want to know what's going to happen in the UK, just follow the rest of the world, and then a week later the UK will do it. I don't know what it's all about. We still think that we're the empire that controls the world and we have to do everything second. I don't know. You can see I'm not a big fan of our government, but it turns out now that obviously meetings of 6 or more aren't allowed, so that would have made the Runchatlive conference impossible anyway. So but it is all going to be online and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be live. I'm conscious that a lot of conferences at the moment just come across as presentation, silence, bit of lift music, and then suddenly another presentation, silence. I'm going to be online with you from 8:45 in the morning till 5:45 at night. I'm not going anywhere. If I'm going to the loo, I'll stick up a "gone to the loo, back in 2 minutes" sign on the screen. I want to be there. We're going to have guests coming in between the presentations talking. And it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be live. So if you can get 2 days off from work, especially if you're a therapist, then do it. Join us for lunch. We're going to have lunch for an hour and a half and have people coming in, talking and chatting. So that's the idea. I'm very excited. The more I talk about it being online now, the less I'm grieving about the fact that we're not going to be able to kind of be there together in person, which is what the reason for the conference was. So if you haven't got your tickets yet, then it's October 29th, October 30th. And what I'm doing, because of the birthday celebrations, then I am going to give away a code or 2 codes for a 50% discount. So obviously that means you get it for half price. And all you got to do basically is share any of the posts I've put on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn. Yeah, just share it and copy in 2 of your friends and copy in me at Runchatlive. And then next week, my next guest next week, Alice Sanvito, I'm very excited about, is going to do kind of like pick a number. I'll have all the people in here and I'll pick out 2 and you'll get a 50% code. So obviously it's for people who want to come along to the conference, and maybe I'm trying to help people who are umming and ahhing because they can't afford it. This is your chance now. Put some posts out there. You can do it as many times as you want on different streams, and your name will go into the bowl, and 2 people will be getting a code with a 50% discount. Is that fair enough? And that's to celebrate 2 years and 50 episodes. Like I say, next week's guest, Alice Sanvita. I'm so excited. Well, I'm excited for every single guest I have. I love my job. It's not a job, it's a hobby. I don't get any money for it. It's just a pleasure to have the people of this caliber up. Alice Sanvito is a speaker at this year's conference online. Last year there was, why haven't you got a massage therapist? There was some interesting debates between physios and massage therapists in the audience last year, and rightfully they said to me, Matt, you had 10 speakers, you had osteopaths, chiropractors, massage therapists, why didn't you have a massage therapist? I said, next year I'll be getting you a massage therapist, and boy have I got you a massage therapist. Alice is a fantastic experienced massage therapist, but she's really on the ball. She's evolved like all good massage therapists has, and she is going to be talking about putting the evidence back into massage therapy, particularly obviously for runners. On social media, she's already quite famous in the circles for her hashtag shit that massage therapists say, which kind of sums up her approach, in your face, but a fantastic resource if you're trying to move with the times and get better results for your patients, instead of saying, I'm going to undo this scar tissue in your hamstring with my elbow, stuff like that, which we all learned, but we have to move on. You can't undo scar tissue with your hands. Ask a surgeon that and they'll laugh at you because they need to use a scalpel. So yes, Alice is a brilliant person to be talking about that. She's gonna be here next week, same time, same place, 8 o'clock UK time. She's gonna be talking from St. Louis, Missouri. Really looking forward to that. So there we go. Right, wow, 9 hours, 1 hour 28 minutes. Thanks for staying with me. Thanks for joining us live. Thanks for listening on the podcast. As always, if you can, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Apple Podcasts, I haven't mentioned that for a while, but it makes a big difference in terms of our ranking and getting the message out there. So if you can leave a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts, that is much appreciated. Thank you once again to my guest, Guillaume Millet. Fantastic hour. I can't wait to listen back to it again. There are some real gems there. Yeah, we'll see you next week, same time, same place, for episode 51 of Runchatlive. Thank you and take care of each other. You're listening to Runchatlive podcast, putting the evidence back into running injury and performance.